everybody. This is James and Praagh on Life After Death and Beyond, lovely podcast. My good friend Kellee White. Hello, Kellee.
Hi, James. Hi, everybody. How are you doing today?
Good. Today is again one of my favorite shows. The end of the year. Not only for symbolize the end of the year, but a lot has been spoken about, and a lot of people have commented through the social media platforms about our predictions. So there's going to be a show about our predictions that we made and what came true. And
James, I think we should tell everybody how this works between the two of us. It doesn't work this way with everybody, but
it doesn't work with everybody the same way. No, we've said, obviously, as I was talking to our producer earlier, we have such a chemistry as we do with our friendship, and we just let each other just experience and share and so forth. So everybody's different, and prediction-wise, so psychic work, if you will. It's very different than mediumship for me. It's for me, I really open up myself to, it's so weird, putting it in human terms, kind of project my mind, not my thoughts, to kind of a space, and I put a timestamp on it, like the future, I'll say the future, or a month or 6 months. What is going to, and then I really just open up this, it's like a screen, and I'll say what sticks out, what pops out. And it might be a war, it might be economic problems. So, and that's what I bring in. And the rest is really I just download. They're just kind of channeling and streaming. And how do you work with predictions, Kellee?
Well, I do a couple of things. I also will receive downloads. They just come in, or they come to me in dreams. I'll have a dream of something, and then I won't just have the one dream. I'll have either several dreams of something if they're really impressing that on my mind, like 2020. But for me, also, I love to look at everything astrologically. I love to see where the planets are and what that comes about from all the planetary action.
And how do you do that? So when you say look astrologically, is this something you literally take a book?
I literally look at all the planets where they're going to be for the next year, and I look at all of the aspects and I use Vedic astrology, which is where the proper place is of the planet at that moment. So I look for things like eclipses. Eclipses tell us a lot because eclipses bring change and transformation. So I look at eclipses. I look at squares when planets are squaring off. I look at oppositions when they're opposing one another. I look at retrogrades to see what from the past is going to come forward. And when I do this, you and I have this beautiful energy that comes out of this.
So let me ask you this question, because there's a separation between your prediction that you're just psychically picking things up at the flow, and then is there a separation into the astrology, or they feed off each other?
They feed off of each other. So if I look for a certain aspect, or if that aspect shows up, I know that Spirit's brought me this information because it wants me to, kind of either prepare people, or because it's not just, I love to look at predictions for the world, but also for the individual person. What is it going to bring? What do these aspects bring for change in the world for the person?
Well, and the reason I'm going on about this is because a lot of your predictions that's coming this past year were really very much, I say astrology was their key player. So this show is going to be about the predictions that we both made, and we had a guest named Harry T, a psychic who also made predictions. So we're going to have you enjoy the prediction.
Yes.
We get close, but I get a sense of, God, it sounds really weird, but I get a sense of globally, the globe's communities come together, governments come together to help the planet financially. And it sounds very, very weird.
Oh, interesting.
And there's also a third alliance I got, not just the NATO and Euro. I just get there's going to be a third kind of alliance, but I think they're going to help to share, because it's going to be hard. It's going to be very, very hard for financially. But
and I think what also will happen is we're going to see stocks go way up and then down again, way up. I mean, just these extremes, just like weather.
How often is that, Kellee? The next 6 months, next year?
Oh, for the next 6 months.
Yeah.
For the next 6 months. And as we get closer again to the, November, I think things are going to be changing left and right.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's very, very true.
Yeah.
And it was it's pretty incredible. And also there was you talked a lot about earthquakes. We talked some earthquakes and
weather. We talked a lot
of changes, right?
There were a lot of weather situations because Mercury, that in 2024, this year, Mercury was Gandanta which means going from a fire sign to a water sign, like 4 times.
Wow.
So much intensity. And the planet Uranus has a lot to do with earthquakes, and Uranus was badly situated. So there were a lot of ways to tell that there were going to be earthquakes and or floods, which there, fires. I mean, this was quite a year, a lot of shakeups this year. Now, let's talk about land changes. I think that's very important what you said. Yeah. We have 2 things going on. This Uranus is in Taurus for 7 years. Uranus is the planet of awakening, sudden surprise, the electricity. It is in Taurus. Taurus is an earth sign for 7 years, and it just went in 7 years. So they don't get along, James. And so absolutely what you're saying is we're going to see earthquakes. In fact, let's talk about earthquakes. Yeah. Because I feel that, and let me just mention this too. Mars goes into Taurus in Vedic astrology around the 13th of July, and it stays for till the end of August. Now that's important because then we'll have Jupiter in Taurus and we'll have Uranus in Taurus, and then we'll also have Mars. That could be huge earthquake. And I'm going to say in California that it fits that area. There were also there was religious institutions and scandals and shifts that were happening this year. A lot of scandals this year. A lot of political scandals.
Yeah, that's what Kellee said. The foundation that things are built on fell apart. And I remember whether it was Jupiter or something, or someone was Capricorn. I remember last year, we talk about it all the time, but I remember you said it last year. Next year, the foundation is going to go.
And so let's talk about that. Pluto, I know it was a really big deal because Pluto is called a Pluto return. And after 248 years, when Pluto comes to do a return, which we would have never seen in our lifetime, I mean, this is it. And it touches down in the United States chart 3 times in 1 year. That suggests a heavy revolutionary cycle. And
Capricorn, right, Kellee? It's in Capricorn.
Yes, in Capricorn in Vedic astrology. And I have to say, Pluto doesn't care. They don't care. Pluto does not care about feelings. It just is here to destroy. So I knew this was coming. So I knew that there would be a huge revolutionary things to happen in the United States, of which happened. Something very different happened.
And speaking of cyclical, it's all cyclical, but there's also a sense of karma too.
Oh, yes.
And I think a lot of this is, of course, karmic as well.
On October 9th, Jupiter, the largest planet, it's in Taurus, at 27 degrees in Taurus, Jupiter. Oh. And it is about spiritual growth. And when it stations to go retrograde at 27 degrees, it makes it extremely powerful, and there will be a crisis of faith, and it will change. Everybody's going to reassess their political views, their ethics, their plans for the future. It's a very intense time when this happens. It's just coming down the road to happen. And conflicts will increase, James.
Yeah, and there's going to be people that believe in how can I say this? Showing me breakdowns of religious organizations.
Yes.
Yes.
The
political religious organizations are going to shift. They trust these people, and they're going to say, "Oh, they're just business people. They just want money, or whatever it is." They're going to see them start to crumble. The heads of it, if you will, the people that are in the forefront.
Also, it has ideological clashes, so that brings wars. So Pluto indicates the elimination of the old, and if you think about it, it gives you the power for this process. And Pluto is like Kellee. You've heard of Kellee the Destructor?
Sure.
The Destroyer. So Pluto is what it does. It transforms these old, outworn ideas, and it gets very intense.
So the royals are very topical right now. I think, especially with everything that's going on in the world, with them especially, they're so highlighted. Well, I think in many ways, we are going to see a lot of issues with King Charles. I remember many years ago predicting that King Charles will be a short-lived king. Like, he won't have a long reign.
Yeah.
And it had nothing to do with him being older. I mean, look at the Queen. She was much older than him. Right. Queen Elizabeth, died a lot older than he is. But I remember doing a segment on the Today Show many years ago, and I said, you know what? I think if it goes to Charles, he'll be a short-lived king. And now he's got all these health issues with which have come to public. So I do believe that he will be a short-lived king. I don't think he will reign for many years. It will be short. It'll go straight to William. Like William will be sort of like a young king, and he'll do very well. But I think, you know, Kate, who we
I was
all
just
love,
asking about Kate's health condition.
Kate, well, we all love her, right? She's an amazing woman. I think, unfortunately, she's going through a really hard time. You know, I know that, you know, whenever someone goes through health issues, it's one thing, but I think for Kate, what she's going through is so much, I think, worse than even what people think. So I do feel for her. I think, you know, health-wise, she's really struggling. I don't actually even think she's gone back to work. You know, I think she was meant to, and I don't think she has, because she's, you know, focusing on her health, which she needs to. But I think that's a challenge. I really do feel it's a challenge. I don't
Harry,
think
as
this
you're
is a little
saying that,
thing.
I want to ask you a question because it's kind of interesting, if you don't mind.
Yes.
When I first heard about her health, it felt to me like she was taking on the royal family's stuff and a lot of their energy and the generational stuff, and she was bringing that out. And I think maybe that's why her health was affected.
Well, you know, James, let me respond to that, if you don't mind. Her, in Vedic astrology, Kate's rising is Cancer. And so to what your point is, yes, taking on everything about responsibility. And my belief with her is that we choose our illnesses, we choose these kind of things before we incarnate. And I think that Cancer is very important in the world for healing. And I think she is going to be, I do believe she recovers from this, not today or tomorrow, but she will recover. And my prediction on Kate is that she will use this and become one of the greatest spokesmen for Cancer that has ever happened.
I agree on that point.
And bringing out healing for everybody with it.
I feel the same.
Now, a lot of what we talked about, predictions that came up a lot, was the weather patterns, wild weather patterns, wildfires, flooding. A lot of that came in. Is that easier to predict for you? Or
well, is it easy for you to predict that?
It just seems, yeah, it does. It does.
Okay.
It does seem changes, transformation, changes. Yeah, that comes through easier, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
That, and if you're gonna have children, I mean, I get a lot.
Yeah, you're really good at that too. It's
you're
true.
gonna have 2 kids. What? You're gonna have 2 kids. Lots more friends with that.
Right.
Ready to be a mother and be a father. So.
Yeah, but there was a lot of astrology that pointed for wildfires in the summer on the West Coast. A lot of astrology for that. And again, a lot has to do with the planet Uranus, which is the planet of shock and surprise. So sudden surprise, sudden change. And in California, there was a lot of widespread devastation. And
you also mentioned, I'll never forget this, about the floods. And I mentioned about the floods that were going to take place.
Yes, I'll tell you another one that I did too. I just won't forget this either. And this was a psychic hit when I said it. We had an eclipse, and I said that eclipse, and it was in Pisces, which is water. And within 24 hours, the bridge had been knocked out by a ship.
Yeah, in Baltimore. Yeah.
Which was a huge devastation, huge loss.
Yeah, I think it was 2 days after that.
Yeah, like really quickly. Yeah. From March 24th, today is March 25th, and into tomorrow, Mercury, which is almost in retrograde. It's not in retrograde yet, but it's headed there. But it goes from, as of today, it moves from Pisces into Aries on that eclipse. Now, what's important about that is Mercury, which is the fastest moving planet and the planet of communications. It's how we talk and think. It rules our mind, frankly. It is in what we call Gandanta. And Gandanta is that 29 degrees going into 0 degrees. It means going from a water sign into a fire sign, or a fire sign into a water sign. And it's a very intense time when this happens. And it also means Gandanta itself means drowning. So you might feel like you're drowning in your emotions. It might have trouble with water. We might see some unbelievable water situations come out. So it's a very intense energy here.
And a lot of AI, the technology, we talked a lot about that.
Oh, you talked a lot about AI because you saw so much changing in the future with AI.
And I still do, even today. It's so weird. Even today, I don't know, just these sudden moments, things just hit you. And today I was like in the truck driving back to the dog park, and like, oh, it's going to change. And there's going to be new terms, like new terminology of how you look at reality. Is it real? Is it fakery? What, it's going to be an interesting way to measure reality of things. So I think it's going to continue on and on. And I do think it's going to get worse.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. But you've always said that about AI and about the future with the new things that are coming. Like some of the new things that are coming are really going to be incredible, especially with, we'll talk about this later, but with health. But you always talked about AI and just the new modalities that were occurring at such a fast rate. Technology
changes completely. And what we know now is technology will be old very quickly. And it goes down to a simple little, like, I don't know, they showed me a little disc, almost like a little battery, lithium battery type little battery. That's where all the information is stored. This is what they were showing me. It's going to be like that, whatever that means. And everyone will know that. And systems are going to start changing, exploding, if you will, letting go. Things that they also told me when you were talking, that the reason why all these things are happening and feels like going backwards in the planet, it says because we're forcing you to look at your reality and question your realities. That's why. You need to question the reality that you're perceiving because it's not real. And they just kept on talking about you need to perceive the reality, understand it's not what you think it is. It's something very different. And it takes breaking structures down and in some ways, systems. It'll be a system breakdown and a reshuffling. You're right on. You're right on. But I'll back up a lot of the things that you're saying. Go right ahead, Kellee. Because I love what you're saying. I mean, not the information, but how you're bringing it. A lot of postponement. There we go. I got a lot of delay. Things will be delayed. What you think is the way it is going to be delayed. You said a timeline earlier. Timeline changes. Things are delayed. Like this. It's just back and forth, back and forth. So during the next few weeks and the months and the next year, or next even couple of years, people are going to be fragmented. And what I mean by that is their friends and families are going to fragment. Okay, wait. I wrote this down. It says family relationships shift. Oh my gosh, there you go. Family relationships are changing as we know it. They will never be the same. Family, like the structure of a family will change. It will not be what we expect it to be. So he's right on. Right on. And all of this is going to make each of us go inward. And you're going to ask yourself, who are you, really? And it's not a punishment time. We wanted to be here for this time. And Kellee, it's a time for people to empower themselves. Yes. To have a spiritual awakening, James. A spiritual awakening, really, you're a soul having a human experience, not the other way around. You are a soul. And try to empower yourself as a soul. Yes. We're not, like Kellee said, we're not just dropped down here. We chose to be here. And because it's one of the many millions of schools for the soul. Very hard one, but we can grow very quickly here, advance quickly. Right. Everything's so quickly, so fast. And, it's very interesting. When I was a little boy, and we talked about this during the year also, I remember when I was a little kid, 4 or 5 years old, I was aware when there were cars, and you might have had the same awareness, that I saw cars, and I wasn't necessarily present in everyday time. So there you go. So when kids first come back, toddlers, their mindset is still of no time. They're not really used to the linear time because they've come from a dimension which doesn't have linear time. And I remember coming, and I was like looking out the window or the door at my father's Impala, whatever, and I'm thinking, oh, that's not going to happen. In the future, whatever I thought future was, there are going to be flying cars or cars that are going to run on magnetism. And I knew the word magnetism. Oh, my. Yeah, the polarities. And I was like, oh, and I thought, well, and then I watched the Jetsons TV. Right, my favorite show. Oh, yeah, right. And I'm like, oh, but it was really kind of like hovering. People become hovercrafts. When I was a little kid, I could see hovercrafts on the roads, the freeways, the expressways. And it's very funny, Kellee, but I had that hit, and I think that was meant to be. But I think the choices that were made with those who control the leather, the tire, whatever, the gasoline, whatever, they squandered. They not squashed that one. Wow. I really do believe there's a possibility of that. So predictions are likely that what will happen in the future if like even in psychic work, when you are in the moment, that particular moment, you see things at that particular time.
With timelines. I call them timelines.
Timeline.
Yeah, on timelines. And in fact, to your point, James, I remember we did a prediction show in April, and I said, because I saw this, I saw all this angelic energy coming on the planet. I just kept seeing more and more angels coming on the planet. But what I did see is that I saw Kamala Harris as the president, and I saw Biden not being there and then not being there. It was very confusing to me, but that was a different timeline. And then he stepped down.
So you were right on with that. She stepped in.
And she stepped in. And then what I saw was, and this is where the astrology came in, I saw Donald Trump's chart, and it was off the charts. It was huge. His chart was so much stronger on that day.
Election day.
On election day. It was the timing of it was the timeline change. And as a psychic, we will look at a timeline, and then different choices are made, and there's a different timeline. Yeah, well, and that's that Pluto return that I'm talking about every 248 years. That's that aspect, James. That's why Pluto is so important, because it means deep transformation. Whether you're ready for it, whether you're not ready for it, it doesn't really matter. That's what Pluto does. And it really shows its strength. I remember when somebody years ago tried to make Pluto a non-planet. They called it like a dwarf something.
That's right.
It was like, I don't think so. Nobody has more muscle than that. Think of Mars on steroids, and then you have Pluto. It's like to a higher degree.
I think when it comes to nature and food, if you look at certain foods, how it can even resemble body parts. For example, a walnut looks like a brain, and it's brain food. You know, a strawberry, you know, it's heart food. If you cut it, it looks like a heart. You know, there are a carrot. If you cut a carrot, it looks like the iris of an eye, and it's eye food. You know, it's so interesting because it's almost like God, our creator, which, by the way, I do believe in God. And I think I speak about that a lot in my book. And I say, you know, if you are more comfortable with creator, universe, whatever, there's definitely a higher power, you know, the creator of the created. I think intended for certain things to think, you know what, that could help us, you know, like there are signs everywhere. And I think that's true even for nature and food.
People have asked me, and many times have asked on the podcast and in the chat room, what is the spiritual influence? Do the spirit people ever influence?
Oh, such a great question.
How do you answer that?
Well, it's funny, James. I'll do readings all day long, and I'll have a soul that will come through who's very interested in what happens politically, because politically they were very interested on Earth.
Sure.
But I feel that on the other side, that they are just watching lovingly. What is your take on it?
Well, yeah, like again, which I love your analogy, from a different lens.
Different lens.
Right?
Yeah.
A different perspective. So there's an expansiveness from the other side when they look at the Earth. I believe there's such an expansiveness. And we're so, my friend Connie passed over 35 years ago, and her husband Jack just passed. And that was interesting because when he passed over, he was didn't necessarily believe in this. And he said, well, you know, it's like we're in a box here. In this universe, a box. And when time to go, the lid comes off and go out. And that's really what it is. They can see things ahead and behind, the spirit people. And they can see if you continue on your path where you're going, this will happen. Now, there are certain things that, and if you don't necessarily won't happen, it won't happen. But this is very interesting. I think that the spirit people are allowed to tell you certain things. But other things they cannot, other things are called hidden. So when my sister first passed away, she said, I've said this on the show, she came to me and said, you guys got to get out of there. World War III is going to happen. You guys got to get out of there. And I'm like, how do you expect us to get out of there? Get out of it.
Right.
So I don't think she was allowed to say that. But I think she had just passed and she didn't know that yet. It felt like I felt that way. So certain things that are hidden, destiny points are hidden. And
there has to be that way, James, because we have free will here.
Right. We have free will.
I mean, there are laws. There are spiritual laws that govern what the other side can share with us. Because you know how people will say, and they'll say this to me all the time, well, you know, how come my spirit guide just doesn't step in? And how come my dad who died just doesn't do this? I mean, it breaks the law of spiritual free will.
It's a natural law.
It's a law.
They'll help us to influence us in ways that continue on our destiny points
Yes.
and on our journey. They will help us with that,
Yeah.
for sure. You know, that's another thing which I find quite interesting that I just ponder, and it's become a part of my everyday life, is that the spirit people are always with us, always around us.
Yes.
It's like always, every step we take, they're around us. And I do feel all the time, I'm walking in a room and it's very crowded. I just feel like when you go to a movie theater and you walk down the aisle and it feels crowded. That's what I feel a lot. I feel like change and energy for sure. Kellee and I, you know, we're different people, so we'll pick up on different things. And I just opened myself up to whatever came in, whatever I wanted to. Whatever I was receiving. And Spirit quickly said to me, when you do prediction work, that you have to understand that many things sometimes are hidden for the human, because there are lessons to be learned. And if you have the answers, you're not going to learn those lessons. And some are indeed are global. So international, global. So we cannot always know the answers. But there are certain things they brought through, and time element is different too, because there is no, with my predictions, it depends on the actual prediction itself. But Kellee, I don't know about you, but I found somewhere easy to get the time and somewhere not at all. And sometimes I was way beyond in years even.
Yes. Yeah, that's very true. And also, let's not forget, Earth is a planet of two things. We've got duality here. Duality is, well, duality actually means, you know, it's like the opposite of. It's the opposite of. It is, you know, right and wrong, big and small, conscious and unconscious, good and evil, you know, black and white. So on Earth, it allows us to experience both types of energy, the shadow side and the light side. And so from one perspective, we're learning all different types of energies that are out there, because Earth is a duality. So also, Earth is not just duality, but Earth also is a free will place. So James, we can make the predictions, but where there's free will involved here as well.
Yeah, very, very much so. Very, very much so. So, and also I think it's important that we realize that it's what you focus on that comes with realization. So I always say it's like a radio, a bandwidth, and, you know, 89.9 can be fear and upsetment and destruction. And 106.7 can be love and peace and harmony. I'm going to go to 106.7. Now I can be aware that those maybe negative things can happen, and they will happen, but don't be caught up into that frenzy. I don't have to be. And that was very much on my trip. I was not going to get caught up in the fanaticism, the craziness of it all. Right. We easily could right now, especially right now in these times we're living.
Especially when energy starts to change the way it is right now, James. And it really is changing. We have big planetary shifts that are coming up. So this kind of energy, we're all going to feel frenetic. And it's going to be an interesting way to view things, because some of the energy will be, you'll feel so upbeat and so positive, and in the next minute you might get pushed down by this intense energy. So it's going to be like a roller coaster. So,
you know, it feels like a big giant stepping on you sometimes.
Right.
Or it feels like you're on top of a mountain singing. I mean, it feels very wavy too.
Did you know yesterday there was I think it was yesterday, and I think it was in Portland. It was over the weekend maybe, about this like not a Ferris wheel, but one of these rides that people go to, and it turns people upside down.
They were stuck.
And when they got stuck for 25 minutes. 25 minutes.
Oh, I would not like that. I would not like that.
But imagine the thrill of going up, and then, you know, that's what I'm talking about. These are some energies. And when you get a hit on that, I mean, I could talk about the astrology, and then you kind of come in with with a spiritual awareness of it, or psychic awareness of this. How does that come in to play for you?
The only way I could describe it are droplets. You know, like you have a faucet and it drips into my conscious, my awareness. And I know it's coming from somewhere else, well, my own psychic ability, but it's very interesting because it's outside me, right? So it's like, and the way I describe it is like droplets. Okay. Mavis Patel used to use the term droplets of God. And I love that, because it's the droplets of awareness. It just comes. Right. And if you're open, you will receive it. If you're in your head, you'll block it out. It'll get, you know, rationalized, and you can't do it. You just got to have open heart. Yeah. I agree with that. And I think that things become, government-wise, political-wise, things are shifting. Things will change. And we talk about the structure. You know, the structure will fall down. I think there's going to be restructurings in certain places in Congress and the Senate. Interesting. And they're going to find out there are a lot of people. They're going to uncover a lot of how can I put it? Came back. Secretive things they've been doing underneath are going to come to the surface. And it's not going to be one or two senators of Congress. It's going to be a bunch of them.
It's going to be a bunch of things
on both sides.
Yeah.
It's going to be, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I also have more congressmen and senators go to jail. I put that right down there. There's also going to be, it's really interesting. There's going to be a questioning in the branches of government. It's going to be a change in the branches of government.
It can be. When you start to make world predictions, how does that work with you? Do you think about it before you say it? Do you?
Well, that's a great question.
Do you write
as
a
well.
name down? Do you write a down or no?
That's a great question too. I think sometimes things will be triggered. So like I will, if someone asks me a question and response sort of occurs. So if I hear something, it's almost like a trigger for me. And that will sort of springboard into the vision, or sometimes I'll hear words. It's like I can hear words, I can make out what that means. But I can see very far ahead. So sometimes when I'm making world predictions, like when I wrote the book, I have a chapter called The World to Come, and I sort of just, zoned out. And I had a candle there, and I just sort of looked at the candle flame. Not that I was trying to be Nostradamus, because I think he did that, but I sort of looked at the candle flame just to sort of clear my head, meditate. And I just saw pictures, and let's just pretend I saw something about I don't know, smoking, let's just say, and I would see the smoke, and then I would think, okay, what does that mean? And that did happen, by the way. I remember seeing smoking, and I thought, what does smoking have to do with anything? And I remember thinking, oh, one day it'll not be legal to smoke. So, things like that happen. So it's almost like a vision, and then I get words, and then I just piece it together like a jigsaw puzzle.
Let me ask you this. Why do you think you can bring, what's the reason to bring that in?
To bring what in? The
information of perhaps there could be a war or any event.
Oh, what's the reason they're bringing things? That's a very good question, Kelly. I think that, again, there are certain things that are hidden, and certain things are there for the awareness and knowledge of humankind. So if you can spread that word, if we get that knowledge comes through, they want everyone to know, then it comes in. That's how.
Well, and I think what it does is it helps to prepare people, and it also may help with changing of their attitudes of things.
A different lens.
A different lens, different perspective, because it doesn't mean we have to go into war. It doesn't mean any of that. It means that we all have the ability to go inward and make different choices.
Yeah, wars mean nothing. Wars that hurt each other. We hurt each other with that.
Oh, truly.
We're all one. We're all connected as one. It's just these. I don't know. It's like almost like I remember this from being a writer, of course, but remember this in school when we were kids, and we wrote let's say an essay, and you get it back, and there'd be red circles around, words. Like it's kind of like that. It's like you see a grid, and like something pops out. That's kind of that's what we describe it, I guess.
I like that one.
Yeah, I like that one. Really, really. Thank you.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and I love how you always say thank you to Spirit.
Well, I feel that they just download that to me. It's just coming from somewhere else. It's just not, it's not me. It's just the more you can open up to the vessel of that droplets, whatever, the more you'll get.
What I'm going to say is that because I feel that this energy on the planet right now is really pouring in this light frequency. This is why we feel, some people are agitated by it. Some people have to sleep more. Things are changing. Consciousness is shifting. And I think in the next 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 months, we are going to see some major changes here. And different events will happen. And when different events happen, and we have free will of how we're going to respond, but I really believe that people are going to have a change in consciousness. I think that there's going to be a huge shift in more of a consciousness than an unconsciousness. I think that the consciousness will wake up.
I just heard you've got to be pulled apart to be back together again.
I absolutely believe that.
To be back together again. And that's what our predictions are about.
Absolutely. And because, what happens is, and the events that I'm talking about, people will have, what wakes people up? Cancer is a big one, the death of a loved one, an earthquake. These are the kind of big ticket items that wake people up. And so my first prediction is that we're going to have a spiritual awakening on the planet more than we have seen before starting now. And we can already feel the shift in energy.
And one thing I wanted to talk about a little bit was in the predictions, because predictions were made. Someone asked in the chat room, what about the spiritual influences? Are there like historical figures that would influence you?
Oh, yeah, great question.
All right. So one of the most interesting ones that I went through, and it was pretty wild. To this day, I'm still like, wow. Not many things get me to go,
Right.
It was real wow. So it was right before my TV show, The Beyond Show, that I did in 2002 or something. And I remember it was a Sunday night, and I was at home in Laguna Beach, and had a fight with my partner Brian at the time. And I don't know what I got. I was just angry. So we had a shot of tequila. I remember that. I was shot of tequila, went to bed early, and he was downstairs. And I was just so angry because something, I don't know, whatever it was. Yeah. And I was going to sleep, but just nodding off. My shot of tequila was just nodding off. And all of a sudden, I was aware of this figure at the end of the bed. And I knew it was a male figure, very, very tall. And I had this sense like I was almost like in between, like, and it wasn't the tequila, it was real. And I looked at this being and I said, "You're Abraham Lincoln. You're Abraham Lincoln."
Wow.
And the being said, "That's the personality you'd know me by, but we come to some kind of order, a high order or some kind of order. Not the new order, but something with an order in it." It's like, and he was, we are many, and there were a lot of them around. And he was wasn't the personality of Abraham Lincoln, but he was Abraham Lincoln in this life. He goes, "That's how you would know of me." I'm like, wow. We are part of this order. It's like, okay. He goes, we want you to know that we're going to help you to change the minds of human beings.
Wow. Wow. Well, yeah. They came to the right person.
Not to mention I've had past lives with Abraham Lincoln. Just promise you. When I was 8 years old, they had a drawing that I just doodled. And many years later, I looked at that, and it was a Northern soldier in the Civil War with a big mustache and blue eyes.
Wow.
And it was me.
Wow.
Look at it, the hat.
Wow.
I've had a connection with him. So what happened was he said, "You remember?" I said, "You're Abraham Lincoln? You're Abraham Lincoln?" "Yes, that's who you know me, but listen to what we are with you now to help you to know what's working through you." And "You're Abraham Lincoln?" I'm so He goes, "Yes." And I said, "I need proof." I said, "I need proof it's really you. You'll have your proof tomorrow." "No, I really need proof it's Abraham Lincoln." He said, "You'll have your proof. Remember, we tell you." I fell asleep, awakened 7 hours later, 8 hours later by the fax machine going off downstairs. And at the time I was writing a book, Heaven and Earth. And in the back of the book, general questions people ask. And the lady who was editing with me, Linda, did your book as well. She wrote the answers. She came up with some questions I gave her, and she came up with some answers to use for space, holders. And one of them was, I'm looking at the facts, and was, what about predictions? What about things? Yeah. What about predictions? And she wrote, she goes, and she knew none of it. No, this happened the day before. She said, "Well, predictions like premonitions you can see outside of time." Very much like the famous Abraham Lincoln death scene where he was actually viewing.
My gosh.
Around his coffin.
Unbelievable. Wow. Do you think that Abraham Lincoln influenced Linda?
Oh, yeah. Oh, it was one of those beings of that order.
Wow.
Whatever. So then that night, I was still freaking me out. I was writing checks out for bills, and I'm writing it out. And also, my wallet falls off the table, it goes onto the floor, and I look down to get it, and there's a $5 bill coming out with Abraham Lincoln's face. I'm like,
"Oh my God! Whoa! They wanted your attention."
Well, from that day on, every single day, there was an Abraham Lincoln reference, whether it was a penny on the stage, whether I'm driving, there's a Lincoln insurance, but it's billboard. So yeah, it was pretty wild. So that was a good influencer.
So they do influence.
They do. Where they can, they certainly will. Well, they do all the time, but we're not aware of it usually. But they're always influencing us for the better of us and for humankind to grow, because it's all about growth and expansion.
Right.
Oh, I got a question for you, Kellee.
Okay.
So when you prediction through astrology, we talk about the free will of humans to change things. What about astrologically? Did things change at all? And if it can, how can it be influenced to change?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, yes, of course. I mean, astrology just presents a roadmap of what can happen and what the influences are on those planets or those aspects. And so often when I'll write about an aspect, I will give a positive and a possible, I hate to use the word negative, but another way that this would go, another outcome, but every aspect can bring great possibilities. So I always want to remember that. And it really is our free will choice. I can just tell you what the roadmap looks like, the road looks like this ahead. There will be two squares. These planets are squaring off with each other, and this could bring a lot of heightened tension. How do you want to use that heightened tension? Do you want to go out and play tennis and get that energy out? Or do you want to call up your spouse and, light a fire under his ass? Do you know what I mean? It all depends on anything like that. So let's talk about this, because the energy that everybody is feeling right now is this October 2nd eclipse, and it's the final eclipse of 2024. But this is what they call the Ring of Fire eclipse. So this Ring of Fire eclipse comes along with a comet. At the same time on the eclipse, there will be the brightest comet in the sky. And they call this the comet of the century, James. It's a big deal because comets are omens. They portend something will happen. There will be some event. And don't forget, on April 8th, when we had the last full solar eclipse that went across the United States, there was the Devil's Comet with that. So this brings a lot of change.
Comets bring a lot of change.
But also, on the day of the eclipse, October 2nd of 2024, it is an 11 day in numerology. And an 11 day is a very, very powerful day, because it means illumination. And what was the word you were using before with Carol? Emanation. Yeah. And 11 is the master teacher, and 11 means to push the limit between darkness and light, or ignorance and enlightenment. It's a huge, huge day. Ironically, on April 8th, on that large eclipse that went across the United States, that also was an 11-2 day. So now we're having, two major eclipses with 11s and comets. This will change the world.
So let me ask this: if this is just putting it out there, if humans had a collective mind, a collective consciousness, could they come together in a positive way and put that out there and perhaps influence anything?
100. I've got chills that you said that, James. I think that might be the most important thing that you could have said, actually. Yes, absolutely. If everybody would put their consciousness to raise their consciousness, which is why you and I are even here to begin with, is help to raise the consciousness. If everybody could see things through a lens of love and kindness and compassion and empathy, the changes would be remarkable. Because just because we might see some cataclysmic thing happen, it could be cataclysmic in the sense that really a good thing happened, because people change their awareness. So a changing of awareness is everything.
Changing the vibration, changing that frequency.
Right.
Great question. Next year, 2025, is there one big astrological event?
There is one big astrological. I mean, there are a lot of things that we're going to talk about, but that we have talked about. But there is something that is huge, actually, James. And really, what it is there'll be a solar eclipse on March 29th, 2025. Now, it's a partial eclipse. However, what makes this really a large event is that we're going to have 6 planets, lined up, conjunct next to one another in Pisces.
Right,
6
Pisces.
planets and Saturn actually changes on that eclipse. Saturn, which is the charge of karma and responsibility and work and health and karma. Let me just say that again. Moves from Aquarius into Pisces in Vedic astrology. So what's important about this? When you have 6 planets, it'll be the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, Venus, Saturn, and Rahu, and Neptune. That's 7, all in Pisces. So Pisces represents emotions. Pisces represents water. Yeah. So we will be talking about flooding. It could be war on the water.
War on the water.
Yeah, because
you're right.
That's a lot of big aspects with this.
Mars in Pisces as well.
Yes, and so we're going to be
war on the water.
War on the water. Yeah. So that sets the tone for the year.
Oh, thanks, Kelly.
You're welcome.
Well, everybody, thank you very much for joining us on our predictions. And we'll do it. We love our prediction show. We know you do, so we'll do some more coming up. So, Kelly, thank you very much for a lovely time, a lovely year with you as usual.
Oh my gosh, thank you, James. What a year it's been.
And And Renee, thank you. It's been a great year. And everybody watching and listening, thank you as well.
Thanks,
and
everybody, for watching us.
everybody.
Take
Until
care.
next time. Okay.